Hello, welcome to Lunchtime Agenda. I'm Tom Connell. It's been a week dominated by talk about Qantas. Now finally some action of sorts. A bill to repeal the Qantas Sale Act Part 3 has been passed in the House of Representatives. Not before some pretty heated debate and a bit of name calling.
We've got that sort of wombolic Deputy Prime Minister stuttering around on the doors saying there'll be no reduction. These people opposite are the cheese-eating surrender monkeys of Australian jobs, to borrow from an American politician. Their only manufacturing policy is to buy a white flag made in another country and run it up the mast. And now they're committing their acts of vandalism on Qantas.
I listened to the Leader of the Opposition's speech, which was obviously designed to hang on to his leadership. It was directed to the people behind him rather than to the people outside this building. And as I've said many times, Labor should stop standing up for the unions and start standing up for the workers. Start standing up for the workers. Unfortunately, while Labor allows itself to be shackled to the union movement, it is a very heavy anvil that they are dragging around.
So, despite Labor's protestations, this bill passed easily in the House of Representatives. It'll head to the Senate, but that's where it will falter, with Labor and the Greens determined to vote no. Well, for more on Qantas and the rest of the day's political issues, I'm joined by our panel today, newly minted Labor frontbencher Stephen Jones and also Liberal MP Tony Smith. Thanks. Welcome to both of you.
Good to be with you. Congratulations, Stephen. Thanks, Smithy. Yeah.
Starting on a very friendly note, we'll see how the rest of the show goes. Let's start with a not-so-friendly note, cheese-eating surrender monkeys.
Oh, well, look, all that talk of cheese made me hungry, I've got to say. After the debate, I went and had a cheese sandwich. It was a willing debate and serious issues at stake. So we could focus on, you know, the name-calling over both sides of the House, or we could focus on the big issues. Bad day for jobs, bad day for a national icon. Hopefully we'll be able to stop this bad legislation going through the Senate. Well,
sometimes the best way to sum up a story is in 30 seconds. If you look at it right now, Qantas is saying repeal the Sale Act, repeal the carbon tax. Labor's saying no. Yeah, we're saying no. There are two major airlines in Australia, Virgin and Qantas. Virgin is backed by 3 governments. Qantas is backed by none, and that's the difference. We agree there should be a level playing field. You know, Joe Hockey was running around the place. If you want them backed by 3 governments, if you open things up, then Qantas could be too, albeit not the Australian government. Yeah, we just don't happen to think that that's in the national interest, that the Chinese government or a government of any other country around the world owns our national carrier. We think the arrangements are right. We think a debt guarantee would be right. We think there's some significant changes that need to be put in, managerial within the company, but it's fundamentally, as Alan Joyce himself has said, it is a good company. Tony Smith, something else Alan Joyce has said as of Wednesday, not so much before, was that the carbon tax was a significant factor in the company's prospects, or struggles, I suppose you'd say. When it was introduced, though, neither Qantas nor Virgin fought it very hard. They were going to, presumably, like many businesses, pass it on to their customers. We're talking in the order of $7 to $9 per ticket, not significant. It seems since the capacity wars, they've decided to absorb it instead. Can they blame the government on something that was a strategic business decision?
Well, the point that has been made is, I think their carbon tax bill was $106 million. And if you look at Alan Joyce's comments yesterday, he's saying even if there was a debt guarantee, the benefit would be in the tens of millions of dollars. Now, we've had a 3 or 4 hour debate down there in the House of Representatives. The issues are very clear. Labor will just say no, but for the sake of good policy and for the sake of Qantas, they need to stop and think. Stop and think before the debate happens in the Senate. I mean, Tom, as I looked around that chamber in that series of divisions, it was very obvious that the Labor Party of today is not the Labor Party of the early 1990s. This Labor Party here in Canberra wouldn't privatise Qantas. They've got their foot on the accelerator and the gear in reverse. And that's the situation that Qantas faces. And if you want to protect jobs at Qantas, give them a level playing field.
Your front bench, I'll get back to the level playing field. Your front bench of today is not the front bench it was 2 years ago before the election, because both Warren Truss and Joe Hockey were saying we cannot get rid of the Qantas Sale Act restrictions, because if we do, Qantas will be broken up. It won't be in the national interest. Jobs will go offshore and a foreign government will come in and buy it. We don't think that's in the national interest. They were right then, they're wrong now.
I'd like to go to the part about the government being reluctant to go guarantor, essentially expose the taxpayers to some sort of risk. It obviously goes into the wider argument about the age of entitlement and so on. What about something a bit tangential, the novated lease tax break? How does that fit into this? This is a tax break that, according to the government, in the lead up to the election, was vital to a lot of car dealerships being able to stay in business at a cost of $1.4 billion to the taxpayer. Why should that still exist?
Well, for the reasons we outlined at the time. I mean, that was policy.
But that is, a lot of those reasons were to prop up those to not hit car dealerships. Now, if they're only profitable because of this tax break, then maybe that should be removed.
Well, what Labor did during the election, and I mean, Labor's conceded it after the election, was they took a sudden decision, as they did with employee share schemes about 5 years ago, that snap froze the industry. I mean, that's what they did. But what we're looking at here with Qantas, you know, Stephen can have a quote war. I can bring up David Epstein's piece yesterday, a former chief of staff to a former Labor Prime Minister and a former senior executive at Qantas. Everyone's examined this thoroughly. Qantas has rightly said that act that was brought in when they were privatised is holding them back. And it's as clear as anything, they need that fixed and they need the carbon tax abolished. $106 million in you know, just the last reporting period. And that is holding them back significantly. Now, Labor's saying no to both. They're saying no today. For the sake of Qantas, they've got to sleep on it and think about saying yes to Qantas.
Stephen Jones.
Yes to...
It's holding them back from doing two things: breaking the company up and sending jobs offshore.
Right.
And forgive me if I think it's not in the national interest that we leave those two things, that we prevent those two things.
Have you flown on
occurring.
Virgin?
Yes, I have, actually. It's an excellent airline.
Yeah, and
backed by three governments.
And what, do they get their
It's an
catering
excellent
from
airline.
Iceland, do they?
No, they get their catering from Australia and from other places as well. But this Act mandates keeping the headquarters, catering, certain maintenance functions, reservation functions here in Australia. I happen to think it's worthwhile going to bat for Aussie jobs.
The jobs that would make sense to possibly shift would be more so, I believe, the maintenance jobs. But just going to one of Labor's solutions, or at least what they want to do, this Senate committee or inquiry with the Greens, does it strike you as odd that a group of parliamentarians or senators are going to get in a CEO and a chairman, albeit one that are under some pretty stringent criticism, get them to outline exactly what's happening, have suggestions for them as to how they run their business? And I've never seen a Senate committee in full unison, by the way. I mean, it could be a bit of a horse designed by a committee here. What will come out of this? Are you going to give a blueprint for Qantas as to how to run their business?
You've got an inquiry into a piece of legislation. That is what the Senate is doing just about every week of the year. So, in a sense, there's nothing extraordinary about that. It's obviously the CEO who is coming to front on behalf of the company. Can I say a CEO who is asking, you know, for changes in the law or certain concessions here or there should be expected to be able to front a parliamentary committee and explain their case. Nothing extraordinary about that. Happens just about every week of the year. Smithy and I have sat on committees where they do exactly that.
There is talk from certainly the Greens and Nick Xenophon that they want somewhat of a forensic examination of Qantas. So is that going to be the path that Labor wants to go down, to really lay everything on the table, look at the operations, have recommendations for the company and the board?
Well, look, you know, Nick Xenophon and the Greens don't sit in our party room. They don't send directions to us. We'll make our own mind up on how we conduct ourselves. This is an inquiry into the impacts of this legislation.
So you don't, just to clarify,
supporting
your aim and
investigating.
Your aim and what you're going to seek for the terms of reference to be when the committee meets is not to lay out, not to have the books opened up, not to be cross-examining Alan Joyce or Lee Clifford.
Well, I'm not saying the books and the accounts of Qantas aren't relevant, but what I am saying, Tom, is there should be a full and proper investigation about what the consequences of these amendments to the Sale Act mean to Qantas and its employees.
What Tom's getting at is, I mean, yes, there are Bill's inquiries and we've sat on them and always been very pleasant to each other, but Tom's point is there's the prospect of this being used to have an investigation into Qantas, into a private company. Now, look, it's not government owned.
Yeah, I know
And
it's
I
not
personally
government.
don't think,
Nobody's
I don't
arguing
think-
it is,
I don't
but
think
there is
senators-
a proposition before the House
But
that we are required to make significant decisions about the future
That's
of
on
that
the
business.
legislation, but it's not about senators saying, right, we want to sort of audit the company and all the rest of it. I mean, it is not. I mean, they can go and buy a share. I mean, if they want to be a shareholder or if they want to be on the board, let them do it.
Tony Smith, we did hear from the Prime Minister and the Treasurer late last year that they wanted a discussion about what to do with Qantas, about more of this foreign ownership. We didn't hear, did we, a really strong case from them before the real woes started in the last week or so, and we had indications from the Treasurer that perhaps a loan guarantee was up there. Has this case been made emphatically enough and for long enough if they want really long-term, heartfelt community support? Isn't it up to them to have perhaps something more in depth? Perhaps this sort of inquiry, is it going to get this?
No, I think you've had 3 months of deep consideration on the issues. And I think what that shows is the Treasurer and the Prime Minister looked at this very, very carefully. And as the Prime Minister said last week, if we're not prepared to provide something to other companies in similar situations, we shouldn't be prepared to provide it in this case. And look, personally, I very strongly think that's the right approach, because otherwise where does it end? And I'm amazingly on a unity ticket with David Epstein on this, who was Kevin Rudd's Chief of Staff.
All right, we're going to leave Qantas there if we can, because you said where does it end, and we don't want to talk about Qantas for the entire show or week. Profit shifting, now there's a bit more bipartisan support here. I want to delve into why you think it's happening when we're talking about these complex things such as transfer pricing, but the headline article today about Apple paying 50 cents in $1,000. Whose fault is this? The US is getting dragged kicking and screaming, it seems, to any sort of changes.
Well, I think this is absolutely immoral behaviour. I think what Apple is doing, I mean, they're hitting us at both ends. They're ripping us off with overcharging us for things like iTunes downloads. Australia pays one of the highest rates in the world for the same product of any other country. So they're ripping us off on the way in and they're ripping us off on the way out. I think it's absolutely immoral. You can't say this is...
What about the US as well?
You can't say this is specifically about Australia, because they're not paying tax anywhere. Here is a company which is, conspiring to ensure it pays tax nowhere in the world. That's immoral.
Tony Smith, Joe Hockey's been pretty strong about this topic and raising it at the G20. Does he have to say to the US, you've got to shift on this?
Well, he rightly put it up there in lights at the finance ministers' meeting.
And squinted.
No, look, come on. There's a G20 leaders meeting in November. It's up there on the top of the agenda. Now, look, this is
the agreement, though, I believe, was to talk about it more, not the strongest agreement as yet.
Well, but look, this is a jurisdictional problem, quite obviously, and that's why you need a world solution as best you can. And it is a highly complex area that's affecting every country. But if you don't get support basically across the board, it's very hard to fix. Now, we're taking a strong stand on it. You've had the finance ministers' meeting, you've got the G20 leaders' meeting. What I thought was interesting in that article, I mean, although Apple haven't said anything, was some of the quotes that the journalist had got from some authorities in the US as well. So it's a live issue for all economies, and it is, in many respects, the #1 tax problem.
All right. Well,
can I make this observation, Tom? Joe Hockey has walked tough, has talked tough and walked soft on this one. One of their first acts when they came into government was to repeal a piece of legislation which was directed at this. So, not been entirely consistent on this particular issue.
All right,
more needs to be done. They'll have our full support on that, but you can't say something and then walk the other way.
I'll be more efficient than my Senate colleagues, okay? That is a misrepresentation. It is. It was a piece of legislation that would have had detrimental effects to a lot of other issues.
We'll look forward to Joe Hockey being very strong on that in the upcoming leaders meeting, as you say, or Tony Abbott being strong on the leaders meeting, I should say. Stay with us on Lunchtime Agenda. Back with more after the break.
Good to be with you.
My name is Jeff McCallum. I've been a farmer since 1964. We farm about 3,000 hectares around the mine with no till. We grow wheat, canola, barley, field peas and lupins, and our yields are persisting. I've never seen an effect from the mine. There's nothing to affect it. Even on, you know, on the boundary of the mine, it's nothing there. You could be farming anywhere.
So call now or search Real Final Expenses Insurance. We'll be there.
Hi, it's Jennifer. I've just seen an ad on TV for your final expenses insurance and I want to find out more about it.
Certainly, I can help you with that, Jennifer. This insurance is designed to help cover the cost of your funeral and other expenses you leave behind.
That's just what I need. I don't have much in savings and I don't want my kids to have to pay for my funeral.
Real Final Expenses Insurance simply takes that worry away.
So do I need to have money saved up right now to buy the policy like I would with a prepaid funeral?
Not at all. That's the beauty of this insurance. You just pay a fortnightly or monthly premium and your family will receive the benefit amount that you've selected, up to $15,000 if you pass away. And the benefit amount triples if death is accidental. But it's important to remember, your family gets paid the full benefit amount regardless of how little you paid in premiums.
How much would I be up for? I'm 56.
On our fixed premium rate option, a $5,000 benefit will be locked in at just $6.18 per week.
And that wouldn't increase?
No, your premium would only increase if you chose to increase your benefit amount. Plus, we'll even refund 10% of the premiums you've paid after the first 12 months of your policy.
Sounds perfect. Can you post me out the application forms?
Oh, there's no need for any of that, Jennifer. You're guaranteed cover right now over the phone with no medical or health questions.
This really is as easy as it sounds on TV.
So why not call now on 1300 337 325 or search Real Final Expenses Insurance.
We'll be there.
Mark Visser made his name as a big wave surfer. Now he's looking for his next challenge. But there's one bit of gear he can't pack. It's something he'll need to find in himself when the time arrives. Courage. And as Mark will soon find out, courage comes in many forms. It's the gear you need.
Down, down, Newton, down, down. At Coles, prices are down, down and staying down on even more of the brands you buy most. Like Huggies bulk pack nappies, new to down, down and staying down to just $17. New to down, down. More brands are down. And Golden Circle fruit juice, new to down, down and staying down to just $2.70. New to down, down. Down, new to down, down. Look at the savings. Down, more brands are down.
Welcome back to Lunchtime Agenda. With me today we have our political panel, Liberal MP Tony Smith and Labor frontbencher Stephen Jones. I might go to the Climate Change Authority report. It didn't get a lot of attention last week. It indicated that it wanted to increase the target, the emissions reduction target from 5 to 15%. Stephen Jones, Labor wants to be on the right side of history here. That's what they've been saying in terms of a price on carbon. Is there a problem, though, and is there a herd of credentials that they did water down the overall policy towards the end of your term? We've got Hazelwood on fire at the moment, but still chucking out brown coal emissions. Does that really hurt your credibility, Labor's on this?
No, look, politics is the art of the possible, mate, and you've been around this building a while. You know about the enormous battles we had on our hands reaching a sensible policy to address the bipartisan targets.
So in an ideal world, you still would have decommissioned those dirtier coal-fired power
We looked
plants?
at all of that. You know the history to those. We looked at all of that. But in an ideal world, you do what you can get through. There is no doubt that there is problems with those brown coal-fired plants down in Victoria. Greg Hunt agrees with that. I agree with that. He's been on the record talking about the importance of addressing that.
When it comes to the symbolism as well, I was interested in some comments from Chris Bowen on Sky News yesterday. He said when it came to the carbon tax, the impact on Qantas, the realistic part about it is that the Senate's going to repeal it anyway on July 1, and on July 1 would be when the current government can repeal it anyway, even if Labor agreed. So is he just saying, yes, this is a token stance?
No, look, it's important that you stand for something in politics, mate. We went to the last election saying that we would agree to repeal the carbon tax so long as it was replaced with a sensible market-based solution, lowest price of abatement, lowest cost to consumers, lowest cost to the economy. We still stand by that. We haven't changed our mind with the elapse of 6 months. That is still what we believe in. If we'd have done a backflip on that, you'd be sitting in that chair today saying, what does Labor stand for?
He wouldn't. He'd be saying he'd be saying you'd respected the mandate the government got.
Well, you got a mandate and I got a mandate, mate. Well, I'm sticking by mine.
Well, let me throw one at you. After the 2007 election, you had a mandate to repeal work choices.
Yes.
That was the central issue of that campaign, just as the carbon tax was the central issue of this campaign.
When does it become the central versus a secondary one? Because arguably, climate change was a pretty big part of 2007 as well, possibly the second biggest issue. So do you get one issue a campaign? Is it incumbent upon a leader to do what Tony Abbott and do and make it this is a referendum on?
I think, of all the issues in the last parliament, we couldn't have been clearer about our view on the carbon tax. We couldn't have been. And my point I was about to make is in 2007 and 2008, when Stephen came into the parliament, he made the point, along with all of his colleagues, that we had to respect the mandate that the new government got, and we did. We did. We'd introduced work choices, we'd lost government. Clearly it was the central issue of that campaign.
Follow that argument through to its logical consequence. Whoever wins the election, everyone else ought not turn up because their votes don't matter. You just do whatever the government of the day. I haven't vacated the things that I believe in, and my colleagues haven't either. So we're going to stick to that. When you're in government,
you want us to respect your mandate.
I think the mandate theory leads you down a dead end. It doesn't take you very far.
But if you do say that you've got one central mandate, what was the election about? That was about. You could argue that, I suppose, and draw parallels between the work choices and the carbon tax. But where does that leave, let's say, a secondary issue, as I said, perhaps the environment in 07, perhaps the mining tax now? Does that mean that Labor can be obstinate on the mining tax?
Well, I didn't say it was the sole issue. I said it was, obviously up there in lights. I mean, if Tom, if you were on, one of the other talk shows and they said, right, you covered the 2010 election as you did, what were the big issues? You'd run off carbon tax, mining tax, and a couple of others.
You have a mandate to put your legislation before the Parliament. I don't argue with that. We have a mandate to say, well, we agree with this and we don't agree with that. And that's what I'll do as the person who stood on my platform.
What about the headline out of this Climate Change Authority report, going from advising the emissions target should go from 5 to 15%? Is that something that's gained much traction within any joint party room since? Is that something anyone's mentioning?
I don't think it's even been mentioned. I mean, the emissions reduction targets of both the parties have been pretty clear.
Stephen Jones, you're not keen for any shift,
well, I think
or is Labor taking much notice of this report either?
I think the difference between Labor and the Coalition is we have always been mindful of and accepting of the advice of the scientists.
Right, let's move beyond that though. This 15% target, is that gaining much traction? Can we expect something out of Labor?
To be honest, the report's been out for a week now. We haven't delved through it. I'll be surprised though, I've got to say, Tom, if there's a significant shift in our policy. Politics is the art of the possible. It's been hard enough getting to where we are today. They are arguing against everything that we've done and trying to pull it apart. It's going to be very hard to defend what we've got, let alone extend it.
All right, I might move on to what I grant is a slightly delicate subject, so we'll all be careful. But Tony Burke's comments on the Speaker and how he said he is obviously guided by various principles, which everybody is, but he was asked about how he believes the Speaker is conducting things, how the 44th Parliament is going. He said that he wouldn't comment on that, but as a general rule, he says that referees should not be involved in sledging on the field. Stephen Jones, dangerous territory, something you agree with?
Hard to disagree with the principle when put like that. I've always had a pretty fair dealing with this and all previous speakers. But sometimes I look at some of the rulings and I must say I raise my eyebrows and say, from where I sat, that wasn't how I saw the things unfolding. And I guess when we watch the cricket, we do the same thing.
Well, yeah, I'm certainly guilty of that one, some of those DRS reviews. But when
unfortunately, you don't get a DRS review in Parliament.
No, you don't. But when it comes to this, I mean, do Labor just have short memories? When's the last time an opposition came out and said, gee, the Speaker's gone
I want Stephen to keep talking.
Here's what I do recall. When we were in government and when either Anna Burke or Harry Jenkins were the Speaker, it wasn't unusual for somebody from our side to get turfed if they did the wrong thing. Now, sure, it's only been 6 months. I don't recall somebody being ditched from their side of the Parliament. Maybe I just haven't been there long enough yet.
Tony Smith?
Look, the Speaker is doing a fantastic job. I mean, what Tony Burke is...
It's certainly a difficult job, isn't it?
It is a very difficult job, and you're never going to please the whole parliament. But she is very accomplished, very across the detail. What you're seeing with Tony Burke, from our side, as we sit there in question time, is his sensitivity about his role. I mean, the question's like two halves. You've got Tony Burke and then Anthony Albanese working out when he's going to come to his rescue. And
Tony Burke has thrown some verbal grenades of his own over the years.
Look, we and the Speaker, I have heard the Speaker herself say this, we have a very robust Parliament. There is no doubt about that. This is not a place for wilting wallflowers. The Speaker herself was as good as the best of them when she wasn't sitting in the big chair.
I'm sure she's ready to...
Here's what I will say. Yeah. I think it is important for democracy and for the government in particular that not only is the Speaker impartial, but is seen to be impartial. I think that's incredibly important.
The Speaker's ready to fulfil her her very difficult role again. I better let you two go and get to question time. Thank you again for your time on Sky News.